And here to talk about, imagine that, the lost recordings. The lost recordings of Patsy Cline, that is very exciting. As great an artist and as popular as she was, she actually didn't record that much. So most welcome. I have the pleasure first to introduce, to my immediate right, Dylan Utz, who is an audio engineer and founder of Starlight Sound, a Maryland-based transfer lab which offers restoration services. He is unrelated to the potato chip family. Born in Silicon Valley, Dylan's lifelong love of music first materialized at 4 years old when he started burning CDs. I started burning CDs when they hit the market, but you know. As a teenager, he discovered 78s and experimented with digital transfer. He was trained as a recording engineer in college, earning a degree in audio production with the help of Doug Pomeroy, Jamie Howarth, and a few others. He began pursuing a career working with legacy formats. Dylan has independently studied disc transfer, audio restoration methods, and the history of recorded sound for the last 6 years. A member of the ARSC Technical Committee, his current research objectives include the improvement of coarse groove reproduction, and in addition to records, he collects cameras and enjoys film and digital photography in his spare time. So please welcome Dylan Utz.
Thank you very much.
You're going to do this at 10?
We're doing this one together.
My bad. So, and I also have the pleasure of introducing George Hewitt to Dylan's immediate right, who is an historian and discographer, born and raised in Edmonton, Canada. He studied classical piano with the Royal Conservatory of Music from childhood and attended jazz studies at MacEwan University. He also plays fiddle by ear. At the age of 4, George learned how to operate the family phonograph and is a lifelong record collector. He launched a discography website for Patsy Cline in December 2013. Since then, he's expanded the site to publish discographies for other artists, including Don Gibson, Margaret Whiting, and Nat King Cole. The web pages are evergreen reports generated in Brian, a relational database application named for Brian Rust that George uses to create, develop, and maintain his discographies. Patsy Cline's Imagine That is George's first commercial release. He curated the selections, programmed the album, wrote liner notes, edited the booklet, and co-produced the set for Deep Digs and Elemental Music. For his day job, George is a public servant in an unrelated field. He likes to cook and keep active. He enjoys the outdoors and is father to a greyhound named Sully. George Hewitt.
Thank you very much. It's so fun to be here. Our presentation is called Insights into Imagine That. We're going to volley some questions between each other about our release, and we hope you take a look here. First, George, I would like you to talk a little bit about Patsy's lasting pop music influence and the state of her music before our release.
Well, I don't even really know if Patsy Cline needs an introduction. I'm sure. Can you hear me all right? Oh, thank you. Okay. So, great. Thank you. Appreciate that. I'm not even sure if Patsy Cline needs an introduction. I think we've all heard the name, or at least heard the voice at some point. Film, TV, commercials, jukeboxes. That voice is instantly recognizable. Gets you downright sentimental. There's a strength and an emotion there which is transcendent. So it comes as no surprise, really, that Patsy has had and continues to have a lasting impact in popular music. I say popular music in the sense of pop, country, mainstream, commercial music. But there's more to that legendary status than just the voice. There's the persona, there's the tenacity, the confidence. The dream team of her with Owen Bradley and his famous studio in Nashville, Tennessee, and the Nashville Sound A-team of musicians, which just made some timeless records with some great artists, not just Patsy. And Patsy loved Tulsa, so it's kind of fitting that we're here today, and I'm thrilled to be here. I feel like I'm here on her behalf because a concert was issued by MCA Nashville back in 1997, which was previously unheard, previously unreleased. No one knew about it. It was found by accident. The owner of a club that was here in downtown Tulsa called the Cimarron Ballroom had taped it. And it's a historically important and relevant piece. And here I am talking about a release that's not even ours, but I feel it's important given the surroundings. It was her first concert after she was badly wounded in a near-fatal car accident. And there's a lot of heartfelt dialogue, banter throughout the concert, and at one point she tells the audience that her manager asked, "Have you got everything canceled up until Tulsa?" And she said, "Well, don't cancel Tulsa. I'll be there if I got to crawl," and I made it. And she was still on crutches, badly winded from her broken ribs, but she sang her butt off that night. And we're so very fortunate that that tape was made and preserved, restored, and released. And there's many more tracks that were languishing unreleased that we've done just that with as well.
Got radio transcriptions.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
Recordings.
yeah, exactly. So, I mean, should I speak to the state of her discography?
Yeah.
Yeah, prior to this new release? Okay. So, her live catalog was strategically mined but incomplete. As I mentioned, there's the Cimarron Ballroom concert from here in Tulsa. As you mentioned, the live recordings, there's radio transcriptions. Patsy was, you could consider her to be a singles artist in the sense that she came along at the time when concept albums were just starting in popular music, thanks to Frank and Bing and whatnot. She had 3 albums in her life, but her discography, her commercial discography is mainly singles. And so, you know, she only had 102 studio cuts owing to her tragically short life. They've been repackaged endless times, particularly the early half of her commercial output, which is now controlled by Sony Music Publishing, but it was what we call the 4-Star Masters, which were a small indie label based out of Pasadena, California. And those have loose copyright claims. So there's been many gray market and public domain and bootleg reissues, repackages of that material. Then the back half of her commercial catalog is the timeless Decca recordings with Owen Bradley that everyone's familiar with. But there's also been some best-selling archival compilations that have come out prior to this release. That is one from 1988 called Live at the Grand Ole Opry, one of her mainstays as a Nashville artist. Live Volume 2, which is a misnomer because it's comprised of radio transcriptions made for the armed forces. Artists were paid, I'm not sure what in terms of remuneration, but they were paid something to perform as guests and hosts of those armed forces broadcasts for the military. So she did that. Then there's also some acetates of her appearances on Arthur Godfrey and Friends that have survived. Those have been put out. And the Tulsa concert. And then there's kinescopes and videotape appearances of her from television that have been preserved.
Our album is kind of a spiritual live volume 3. The strange thing about it is you'd see, you know, George has an excellent website, and you go through the recording sessions, and a lot of material is put out on live volume 1, live volume 2, but not all of it. So you would have a transcription disc with 3 songs, and 2 of them have been put out, but 1 hasn't. And that's where we come in. Our release addresses a lot of the unreleased, you know, all of the unreleased material that's out there, and it really is a gold mine.
Right. Yeah, and we'll get on the topic of curation. There's more to come, so buckle in. But well, I mean, we want to speak to that as well, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's see.
Oh, before we do that.
Okay. Well, yeah. Well, how did Patsy inspire you and your interest in discography?
Yes. So, as previously mentioned, Patsy's strong and emotional voice. I was drawn to that from a very young age. I consider her to be a sonic companion. She's been with me through the years, and it sounds corny, but I grew up, propped in front of the family phonograph, listening to her teach me about life and love, and I feel like she's taught me a lot. So, out of fascination and gratitude for the years of musical enjoyment she's provided me with, I built my discography website because of that, and she sparked my interest in discography for the reasons that Dylan mentioned. Her discography's been mined in a scattershot way throughout the years, and I wanted to fill in the gaps for fans, collectors, historians, so that folks could really get to the bottom of how things were arranged and organized in her discography, and also to see what's still available, in the hopes that a release like this would happen. And it finally did. Yeah. And I mean, there's the versatility of style, the rhythm combos in that Owen Bradley production sound. And I think what really sparks my curiosity and imagination with Patsy specifically, more so than any other artist, is that she was kind of a hit voice searching for a hit sound. And that's fascinating to me. And I think those are the types of artists that are most fascinating to research from a discographical standpoint, because you have a fully formed talent. You have someone who is confident and knows they're a good singer. But
From her first
Right.
appearance in '54
That's
on
right.
Mark Seidelman's Lacquer Disc. I mean, she's there. It's her.
But she doesn't have the financial means, the backing, the support, the production support of a major label behind her. No A&R support. So when she was first signed with Four Star, that's when a lot of experimentation happened to find that sound. And so I think that even though her life was tragically short and she's left us with only 102 studio cuts, there's so much variety within those 102 cuts, more so than other artists working in the country and western field back in the mid-50s. Yeah. So yeah, I think that's why we're here.
I think so.
Great. So, Dylan, why don't you speak to what sparked the idea for our album?
Our album was many albums over time. What happened was Mark Seidelman is this guy in the DC area. He finds a lacquer disc of a performance of Patsy Cline with Bill Pear's Melody Boys and Girls. This is what we come to find out from your estimation as the expert, the earliest known recording of Patsy Cline. So what Mark does is Mark reaches out to George, emails him, and George almost, falls out of his chair, looking at the labels of an audio disc lacquer that no one's ever heard before, or at least no one's ever heard since the time it was recorded. George reaches out to Doug Pomeroy, who he knows from a prior project, and Doug says, well, I'm retired, but I have a young friend, and he does disc transfer, and that happens to be me. So for a little while, George and I were talking, and we were thinking, there's these mythical Leon Kagarice recordings that were recorded by a Bendix TV repairman. His name's Leon Kagarice. And we were thinking, what if we were to get those, and then we put them together with Mark's disc, and then we can have like an EP. We can have something, something very interesting. So what I decided to do was I tried to track down these tapes. So I called the record store of the family, owned by the family that inherited Leon Kagarice's tapes. These are slow speed, 3 3/4. They're not well recorded, but you you take it for granted. The recordings do exist, and it's a joy that we get to hear them. So I reach out to the record store. The record store is a man named Johnson Lee, whose father inherited the Kagarice recordings. Johnson Lee connects me with Zev Feldman. And then we start to take a look at the recordings that are out there that have been unreleased. Zev very smartly says to George, what could you put on this if you wanted to? What could you put on this if you wanted to make it a deluxe release? And George had all these Word documents and producing all of these tracks. And we at one point were at 74 tracks. We got a bunch of duplicates. That was, was 74 the total amount of unreleased?
Yeah. Why don't I speak to the curation
Sure.
piece about that?
Yeah.
Yeah, and like you said, I had spreadsheets and Word documents and PowerPoints and PDFs and all kinds of fun stuff for the label to convince them that this thing was marketable. As is the case with any business, there's financial risk when it comes to marketing products, right? And so we had to plead our case, essentially. And as Dylan pointed out, there were 74, if you can believe it, unreleased performances of Patsy Cline, waiting to be mined still after all these years, after her impact in music, after she became number 13 on Rolling Stone's greatest singers list 2 years ago.
Does that 74 number include the ones we found doing this project?
Yes.
There we go.
Yeah, they were quickly added. Added in there. Yeah. I like to keep track, if you haven't noticed.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So the curation of this thing was a big part of it. Listening to Matt introduce me, I was exhausted just hearing about all that I achieved with this release. I think I still am a little exhausted from all of it, but yeah, it was 3 years of production.
It has
work.
been a years-long process.
Yeah, 3 years of production, yeah. So 74 known tracks. Patsy was always on the road. She was always on tour. She loved being on stage more than anything else, I think, in this world. The thrill of reaching an audience through music, making them feel something, whether it's getting a tear rolling down their cheek or getting them up on their feet dancing. She just loved it. And it was also to provide for her family. She worked very hard since they were a family without means. And so because of all of these tour dates, every now and then, folks would record. Right. They'd press the record button on these things, and tapes were saved. It's incredible. So, because like any artist, you would want to promote your singles that the label's been putting out. There's a lot of repetition within those 74 tracks. In fact, the 12 of her studio recordings are represented multiple times within those 74 tracks. Two of her signature songs, Lovesick Blues, which is a Hank Williams standard, and I Fall to Pieces. There were as many as, I think, 6 versions of each that I had to select from, handpick the superior versions for our release. But within that cache of 74 tracks, 15 were brand new songs. And I say brand new in the sense that Patsy never recorded them or never had the chance to record them. No one had ever heard them before. And they were still unreleased. And 4 of the 8 Leon Kagarice tracks that we issued were in fact new songs. So it was a significant number. And fans had known of those tapes for over 20 years. thanks to Eddie Stubbs playing one of them on WSM years ago, back in 2006. And NPR actually did an interview segment with Leon Kagarace, I think around 2000 or 2001, something like that. So, you know, we've been trying for a while to hear these things, and I got very close about 10 years ago, but we finally made it to happen with all the connections we had in the DC area for this release. And of course, TV was still a new medium during Patsy's life, but she smartly embraced that media trend, and she understood the power of broadcasting. Even before she won Arthur Godfrey's Talent Scouts in January '57 and froze the applause meter to a national audience on CBS, she understood what it meant to be on the radio and TV. She grew up listening to the Grand Ole Opry and other radio shows, and so that's what she wanted to do. So with that in mind, like the curation piece, it sort of came naturally, just knowing about who she was as an artist and where she wanted to go and what would most properly represent her trajectory as an artist and throughout her career. And I had presented the label with three options: chronological by category, that is to say, performances that were recorded either as radio transcriptions or kinescopes on television, from television broadcasts, and then air checks, so live on stage that someone just happened to press the record button for. But that option would have resulted in a lot of duplication back to back. We wanted the programming of the release to ebb and flow. Full chronology would have the same issue with repeats astride. So the third option is what we landed on for this package, and that was to present things loosely chronological. But I programmed it in a way so that it would ebb and flow between, you know, rare cuts and live versions of Patsy's hits, while preserving that artistic trajectory throughout, tracing the course of her career. And in terms of selection, I adopted a balanced approach between performance and sound quality, or whenever possible. There were some very rare performances that suffered immeasurably.
Well, I never wanted fidelity to be an issue in terms of selecting the songs.
Right.
I'll deal with that the best I can. There's some things that can't be fixed. There's some things that, you know, 3 3/4 tape is 3 3/4 tape.
Yeah.
It's never going to be 15 IPS. So I was like, George, you know, select the tracks that you feel represent her the best. I don't want anything to be swept under the rug just because the sonics aren't particularly good.
Right. Well, and having this release program chronologically, it also allows for fidelity to improve over time because of the march of time, but also because as she became a more popular artist towards the end of her life, she was booked on gigs that had better equipment. They weren't just the roadhouses with the chicken coop wire protecting them on stage, right? So.
Well, you see kinescope give way to videotape, and
Exactly.
you're starting to see the fidelity of television get a lot better that way too.
Yeah.
None of our optical kinescopes were they were all optical. They were not magnetic, unfortunately.
Right. So 2/3 of those unissued tracks are now featured on this new package. And a realization struck me just a few months back after being able to hold the finished product in my hands and feeling proud about it. There's now only one single from Patsy's life without a live recording presented, or published rather, for at least one side of each single. And that made me extremely happy, but also like how fortunate for both fans and artists to have that that live presentation for pretty well your entire recorded output. Very few artists of her day or even today would have that opportunity. I mean, back then, you know, most country artists who didn't face a tragic end had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of masters. They didn't have time to plug them all live. And today, I mean, artists get maybe 3 albums if they're lucky for their entire career, right? So we're very fortunate. Yeah, and I think that pretty much puts a button on the curation aspect of things. So
Let's go here.
let's speak to the challenges a little bit, Dylan. And why don't you start us off by discussing the rights clearances?
We have a bunch of audio from television shows. Fortunately, all of the intellectual property for these television shows, one of them was not renewed, and then one of them resided with the Hall of Fame. I believe it was Ozark Jubilee. The producer, Cy Simon, sold the rights to that show to the Country Music Foundation. So in our licensing from them, we were allowed the intellectual property rights to, of course, duplicate the materials. The Opry was very, very kind to me. They let me drive down there with my turntable and transfer a bunch of discs that were in their collection. We licensed a bunch of tracks from them. We licensed the 2 from Lacquer from them. Those were the Prince Albert discs. Right. And then we licensed the Pet Milk Grand Ole Opry, which are these beautiful sounding 15 IPS 2-inch quad videotapes. And I traveled down there to transfer those. There's quite a bit of geography involved in getting around. I drove to Chesapeake to meet Bobby Beard, who had a track, a beautiful track, very, very quiet. It's CD1, track 15. It's called Have I Told You Lately? And it's this duet with Marvin Carroll. Yep. And it's really beautiful. I drove down to Chesapeake, Virginia, which is on the border of North Carolina. And then I flew to Eastern Tennessee. I did the digital side of the videotape transfer with the great Larry Odom, the living videotape transfer expert. I also drove down to Nashville, of course. The Opry was very kind to let me transfer some of the discs in their collection. There was a lot of miles involved in getting around. And another challenge that we'd faced was the fidelity of all of these formats. It's very interesting because you have really beat up lacquer. We have vinyl that's in good shape. We have vinyl that's in average shape. Coarse and fine groove discs, kinescope, which is optical, videotape, which is stunning high fidelity. And then we have the Take 5 master tape that the Hall of Fame furnished, transferred by Alan Stoker. So we have 10 songs that I would count as master quality, the 4 from the Take 5 master tape, the 4 from videotapes, and 2 Prince Albert lacquers that were extraordinarily well recorded. But the rest of them is sort of, it's very broad in terms of how does it sound. We have 3 3/4 tape, we have 7.5-inch IPS tape, and it's a challenge to achieve a congruent and consistent sound throughout the entire release. We got 52 tracks, 48 of them are music, and we included important and pertinent dialogue.
Yes.
So that was a challenging, but with I think we were able to do that. It tested me in a lot of insane ways. I mean, we had something on the Bobby Beard on Have I Told You Lately. We had something where they were sending it through a reverb, and the reverb was being fed back into the microphone. And so it had the sound on it that was...
To say nothing of the hog squealing in the barn across the way there too.
On different parts of that tape, they're playing and singing Have I Told You Lately, and there's a hog that interrupts them. Because Marvin Carroll's recording studio was in a barn. Yeah,
it was on a dance hall property that Patsy had performed at earlier that night. It was a country concert there, and then they had a makeshift recording studio in the barn next to the stables. And
yeah. Maybe you could speak a little bit to like mobilizing the fans and all of our source holders.
I think we'll end on that piece, right?
Sure.
I think as scattershot as Patsy's discography has been, so too are the rare recordings that have had yet to be mined. And a lot of fans and collectors through the years have set up Google alerts thanks to eBay, the internet, these
Save searches,
Yeah.
If it comes up on eBay, oh, you sent an email, and then you're like, ooh, what's this?
Right. So the Grand Ole Opry, the Pet Milk Grand Ole Opry radio broadcasts were pressed onto vinyl in limited quantities by Victor.
Not a lot.
And for whatever reason, somehow, I don't know how, they turn up on eBay every now and then and they go for hundreds. But Patsy performed on those. The fans have attained some of those. Also, the Armed Forces radio transcriptions I spoke to earlier.
Take 5, Country
Yeah.
Style USA, Country Music Time, all produced for various branches of the United States Armed Forces.
That's right. Patsy did at least one show for every branch of the armed forces that existed at the time. So, very patriotic gal. And so a lot of the fans have these discs in their private collections. And really, we couldn't have done this, we couldn't have brought this release to market without the help of the fan and the collector community, because in many cases, their copies of these discs are in better condition than the institutions that archive them.
Right.
Yeah.
No, it's very funny. We found something, George noticed something on a spreadsheet that the Opry sent us of their holdings, and it was a disc called Pet Milk 243. Unfortunately, what happened in Nashville 15 years ago with the flooding, I believe the Opry lost their tape collection in that flood. So the only place where some of these performances exist is on the disc. So we're reaching out to the fans and we're saying, if you have a disc that's in really good shape, that's essentially now a master source, and we have to treat it like that. And we found something on that spreadsheet, and it said, nobody but you, and come on in. And George, that's another, you spent a lot of time falling out of chairs working on this, because we're finding new recordings.
My back is killing me.
We're finding new recordings that no one has heard since the time of when they were recorded.
That's right. Yeah, it's been great, and we're so fortunate that the fans all rallied together for us, and got out the phone tree, and
Yes.
There's one fan in particular I should provide a shout out to, and that's William Cox. He's a historian in his own right, and has always been a fan of Patsy's work, as well as the Wilburn brothers, and he really had his finger on the pulse of which fan had what in their collection. So that really helped me out.
Invaluable knowledge.
Invaluable knowledge.
Yes.
To get the best possible source copy.
I got 3 copies of Country Music Time 258, isn't it?
Right, and
I wasn't particularly in love with any of them.
Right.
Sometimes the LPs they're a little bit beat up, but
and that features one of Patsy's signature songs. She's Got You.
Uh,
So we
track
had
17
to use it
track 17 of the
regardless of.
second CD.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great. Well, I think that wraps things up.